You probably think clothing was invented to survive the cold. It wasn't. Humans were surviving ice ages long before we ever put on a single stitch of fabric, bare skin, in the snow, for tens of thousands of years. So if it wasn't the cold that made us get dressed, what was it? The answer isn't hiding in old fabric, because fabric doesn't survive. It rots, it burns, it disappears into dust within a few centuries. There is no 200,000-year-old shirt sitting in a museum somewhere. So how would you ever figure out when humans started wearing clothes if the clothes themselves are long gone? Scientists found the answer in the last place anyone would think to look. Bugs. Here's where it starts. Humans have two kinds of lice. Head lice, which live in your hair and have been with us for millions of years, since before we were even human. And body lice, which are different. Body lice don't live on skin at all. They can't. They live exclusively in clothing, laying their eggs in the seams of fabric, only crawling onto skin to feed. Take away the clothes, and body lice cannot survive. Not for a few days. Not at all. Which means something interesting. Body lice could not have existed before clothing existed. They needed fabric to evolve into a separate species in the first place. So in 2003, a team of researchers led by biologist Mark Stoking did something clever. They sequenced the DNA of human body lice and compared it to head lice, measuring how many genetic mutations separated the two species. DNA mutates at a fairly steady, predictable rate over time, like a molecular clock. The more differences between two species, the longer they've been evolving apart. And when Stoking's team ran the numbers, they got a date. Body lice split off from head lice somewhere around 170,000 years ago. Which means, roughly 170,000 years ago, humans started wearing something that a bug could live inside of. That is the oldest solid evidence we have for clothing anywhere on Earth. Not a scrap of fabric. Not a fossilized needle. A parasite's family tree. And here's what makes the timing genuinely strange. Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, had already existed for at least 130,000 years by that point. We were already walking around with bodies just like yours, in Africa, through multiple ice ages, through brutal cold snaps, without clothes, for over 100,000 years. So whatever pushed humans toward fabric, it wasn't the first freezing night. It wasn't the first winter. Something else happened around 170,000 years ago, and scientists still argue about exactly what. The leading theory involves something you'd never guess. Around 195,000 to 123,000 years ago, Earth went through a brutal climate downturn called the marine isotope stage 6 glaciation. Ice sheets expanded. Africa, where most humans still lived, got colder and drier than it had been in a long time. And this is where it gets interesting, because this glaciation lines up almost exactly with the genetic date for body lice. For over 100,000 years, humans had endured cold snaps with nothing but their own skin. But this one might have been different. Colder, longer, harsher than anything in recent memory for that population. And for the first time, instead of just enduring it, someone wrapped an animal hide around their shoulders and didn't take it off. But cold alone doesn't fully explain it either, because plenty of other cold-adapted animals never needed a second skin, they grew one. Which raises an uncomfortable question. Around 2 million years ago, long before clothing, humans lost most of our body hair. We traded fur for sweat gel, for the ability to run for hours under a blazing sun without overheating. It worked brilliantly on the savannah. But it left us almost naked in an ice age, with a brain that remembered heat regulation and a body that had thrown away its fur coat. Clothing wasn't a luxury. It was a patch. A workaround for a trade we made 2 million years earlier and were only now paying the price for. And once that first hide went on, something happened that changed the entire trajectory of our species. Clothing didn't just keep humans warm, it opened the door. With insulation, humans could survive in places that were previously unlivable. Colder latitudes, higher altitudes, regions with brutal winters that no naked primate could endure. Around 120,000 years ago, not long after that genetic date for body lice, humans started showing up in the Levant, in the Middle East, pushing north out of Africa for the first time. A few tens of thousands of years after that, we're in Europe. Then Siberia, one of the coldest inhabited places on the entire planet, tens of thousands of years before anyone invented a furnace. None of that happens without something covering human skin first. Clothing wasn't just comfort. It was the technology that let us leave. And it gets stranger, because clothing didn't just protect the body. It appears to have changed the mind. Around the same broad window that body lice show up, we start seeing something new in the archaeological record. Deliberate ornamentation. Pierced shell beads in African sites dating back over 70,000 years, arranged in patterns that suggest they were strung and worn. Ochre, a reddish pigment, ground and used on skin or fabric going back over 100,000 years in some sites. Once humans had something to wear, they didn't just wear it to survive. They started wearing it to say something. Status, group identity. Who belongs and who doesn't. Anthropologists think this might be one of the earliest forms of human symbolic thinking we can actually point to physical evidence for. The moment we started covering our bodies might be the same moment we started performing an identity to the people around us. Clothing wasn't just a technology. It might have been one of the first languages we ever spoke without saying a word. There's one more detail buried in that lice research that almost nobody talks about. When Stoneking's team looked closer at the genetics, they found something odd about clothing lice populations outside of Africa. The genetic diversity was lower. Much lower than you'd expect if clothing had been independently invented over and over again by different groups scattered across the world. Instead, the pattern looked like something that happened once, in one population, and then traveled outward with them as they spread across the planet. Every jacket, every wool sweater, every t-shirt you've ever owned might trace back, technologically, to a single decision made by a small group of people in Africa around 170,000 years ago. One group. One choice. One habit that never stopped. Think about what that means. For every single day since then, in every culture, on every continent, in every climate, in every century, someone got dressed. Through the fall of empires. Through ice ages and heat waves. Through wars and famines and everything in between, the habit never broke. Not once. It became so automatic, so invisible, that you did it again this morning without a single conscious thought. You picked fabric off a hook or out of a drawer and wrapped it around your body, exactly like your ancestors did 170,000 years ago, and you didn't think about it for 1 second. That's the strange part about being human. Some of our oldest habits are so deeply buried that they become invisible. You don't feel the weight of 170,000 years when you get dressed in the morning. You just get dressed. But somewhere underneath that ordinary, boring, forgettable act is a decision one small group of humans made in the middle of a climate crisis, a decision that let our species walk into places our bodies were never built to survive. Every time you put on a coat, you're repeating the oldest trick your species ever learned. Or something else's skin, and the whole world opens up.